Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our 10th webinar. I am super excited today. This is our 10th session, and I am conveying a heartfelt thank you to all of you for joining us so far and being part of our journey. And hopefully, you've gained insights and some value out of these conversations that we've been having. A reminder, just keep your pen and journal handy, keep your profile on mute generally, and if you want to participate or say something, you can type in the chat window. And for some reason, if the call drops out or if there's some technical difficulties, please use the same link and you can join back again. This session is going to be recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, Teja Discover Radiant. So if you've missed out or if you'd like to share, please do so by subscribing to our channel and sharing it with friends and family who will find it valuable. So welcome once again, and I'm going to pass on to Jayanti, who's going to introduce our topic for tonight.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited today because we're going to speak on a subject which I think is so relevant. And we're all, since the time we're born until we grow up into adults, we have so many layers of conditioning laid upon us, and often we are not even aware of it. And it's so important for us to sometimes just recognize what we are, connect with our authentic selves. And that's what breaking the mold is all about today. So, Kalyani, I'm going to pass on to you to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Jayanti. And as Jayanti said, this is a great session. I am so thrilled because we have an amazing guest speaker. His name is Amrit Sandhu. He is an international speaker and he's a podcast host. He's the founder of Inspired Evolution. He is a Mindvalley Master Certified Trainer for Australia and India. And he is very experienced, an amazing and engaging speaker. He's delivered plenty of keynotes, talks, seminars, workshops. He is a life coach as well. And he's such a warm and he's got such a positive vibe. You feel connected. You feel like you want to soak up all those words that he's talking about. And his own life journey has been phenomenal. So welcome, Amrit. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And over to you. What would you like to say to our audiences tonight?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me in such a warm welcome. It's such a pleasure to be here, and just thank you so much for putting this together. And it's not lost on me that discover your radiant. It's really nice to see you two sisters following in your radiance. Least of all because it's Jayanti's birthday today. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jayanti. Happy birthday to you. Yeah, it's really beautiful just to see you two, just everything that you're supporting the world and doing and bringing everybody into their hearts and, just helping everybody shine is really special. And I think it's, you're onto something special when, you spend your birthday, your downtime doing what you love. So thank you so much for having me here and being part of this.
Thank you so much. I am super excited. This is the best birthday because it's the gift of giving to the world. So that's the best gift, in my opinion. I'm super happy to receive that. So let's get started. I'm really excited to talk to you. So we'll start with the questions. And here's my first question for you. So, Amrit, I met you in 2019, last year, when you were in Brisbane. And I remember we were having lunch together. And we spoke about this very interesting thing because I'm a PhD student. And I know you were doing your PhD before, and then I know that you're a civil engineer. And then we spoke about this very interesting thing. I remember Jay Shetty had said this in one of his talks, that in India, you're either a lawyer, a doctor, engineer, or you're a failure. And that's such an interesting dialogue, right? But it's so true that we are born and raised to follow this certain path, that you're supposed to be in this particular career, you're supposed to be doing this and that. But the interesting thing is that you broke out of the mold, and from being a civil engineer, you went into being a podcast host and you're a personal growth teacher, you're a life coach, you're so many things now. So tell us what we can do to be brave enough to break out of this conditioning, have the courage to do something that we are told we are not supposed to do.
Mm. Thank you so much for asking that question. And yeah, I'm quite humbled to receive the reflection there. And yeah, it is quite hilarious that Indians, good Indian kids, only really have a very handful of options, like you said, either being a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or a failure. And yeah, none of us really opted to be failures, hey? So we all became a version of a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. And I myself followed the same path of becoming an engineer. I think just from the outset, one of the things to get really clear, though, is it's very difficult to transform or change your life situation when you perceive yourself as a victim, right? Because a victim is a very trapped, stuck kind of mentality. So from the outset there, I think it's important to acknowledge that, you know, there is some part of the dialogue which is quick and easy to blame potentially the expectations of our parents that they put on us. But the reality is that a lot of them, especially with the cultures that we're from, they worked really hard, like really, really hard, right? They worked really hard. And I remember to this day, one of the things my father said to me was like, I worked really hard so you could work really smart. Yeah. And that was a dialogue that I'll never forget. And so when he projected, you know, for me to, you know, be a doctor or be a lawyer or be an engineer, it was from a place of, you know, him trying to do the best he could do to make sure that I didn't go through the same struggles that he did. So I guess I'm beating around the bush, but fundamentally it was coming from a place of love, right? So just remembering that it's definitely not a conversation where someone's been like, you need to be this person. Obviously in some relationships it's more toxic than others, where some parents potentially drive value from their children's achievements, you know, and there's always, you know, a little bit of that in there. But at the same time, you know, like most of what parents do is purely from a place of love, and they're just trying to do the best they can for you. So I think even as a culture, I think we're kind of gifted even just to consider that those are our options outside of the failure one. You know, I think being, if I am talking to an Indian audience, the fact that we are capable of being engineers and lawyers and doctors. I know some people, you know, that puts a lot of pressure on them, especially growing up in our culture. Like if you're an artist and you're Indian, if you're, you know, someone that's meant to be pottery, if you're meant to be a musician, you know, we've got amazing music in India as well. So it really ostracizes some people from the outset. So yeah, just getting that kind of piece clear that everybody's doing the best they can, and from that place realizing that, you know, our parents are doing the best, or the people that kind of instill this conditioning upon us are generally having this conversation for us from a place. They're living in a world that wasn't the world that we were born into, right? So we're the next generation, so we're in a different place. So, you know, admittedly, yeah, if my parents were trying to make me a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, back then the role of a social media manager was not even a thing. Like, you know, there are careers that have been invented now that weren't even careers back then, you know, like there was no job title for Mark Zuckerberg, you know, like there was no option to be a Zuckerberg, there was no option to be an Elon Musk, right, in the world that they grew up in. So I think that's one of the challenges, is that the world is rapidly growing at a really exponential rate, and it is difficult to keep up with it. And to the point where, you know, we talked about this when we were in Brisbane, potentially it's a real interesting time to have a conversation around how much your education serves you. I'm definitely a massive proponent for education. I think education is key. If I wasn't, then I wouldn't be a life coach and a teacher. It means the world to me to be able to learn and teach. And to be honest, I feel like good teachers are just good students. And I kind of, you know, the faith of a Sikh, I'm always learning. um, so in there, I think the key thing to touch home to is, you know, what is it that you really want to do? Like if you're going to learn what you want to learn, and potentially not what someone else wants to learn. So if we really want to go all the way down the rabbit hole, just to honor the audience that's here and honor everybody that's part of this conversation. Generally, when I start life coaching, we start in a really simple place, but it's a really deep place. And the premise is kind of, this is the foundation stone of everything that we build upon, which is you are the universe looking in on yourself, right? And if you can get on board with that dialogue and that conversation, then cool, we can go somewhere and we can build based on, you know, everything that I have to share kind of stems from that fundamental basis. So when you start looking at, okay, we are the universe looking in on ourselves, then there is this inherent property of curiosity, right? So we're curious about the world that we're living in. Why is the universe looking in on itself? What drove it to do that? Well, I don't know why, but there is that whyness, right? That whyness is curiosity. So when we start looking at that curiosity, no two people are potentially the same, right? Like my fingerprint is different to yours. My eyes are different to yours. My face is different to yours. When you stop to remark on that for just 1 second, like no two snowflakes are the same. There's 7.6 billion people here. None of them are the same, right? It's just, that is pretty zany. Like when you stop to reflect on that, that's an amazing metric to drop into. So when you start to reflect on that, and then you start thinking about the education system and the way it grooms us to potentially all fit into a very select handful of careers, then you start to sort of see, hey, maybe, this is not serving people. It's perhaps serving, the industry that is education, or the industries that the education system services. And that potentially, we're pigeonholing people and clipping them, clipping their wings into trying to force them into something that they're potentially not. And I remember one of the talks I gave for an award acceptance speech. They asked me what I thought the future of leadership was on. And I think my response at the time was something along the lines of I'm paraphrasing myself, which is, I think in the past, leadership was management. And that's why management and executives were looked upon really, really, really highly, right? But leadership is changing, because management, basically what it does, it goes, okay, can I manage Jayanti, or can I manage Kalyani? Whatever she is, she's this massive expanded experience of herself. Can I just manage her into, okay, can you just study law and just do the law bit, right? And I funnel all your potential into this one little microcosm of who you are, as opposed to the conversation, which is, what is the future of leadership? Well, I think the future of leadership is embracing the expanded experience of everybody, yes, sure, Jayanti's a PhD student, but she's also an incredible personal development junkie, right? So in there, then there's the conversation that's available, okay, maybe, yes, come to my team and support us in our study and research, but also when we need some team morale or something like that, that's also the person that's there for us, right? So embracing all these other facets to everybody. Leadership is about what can I help you shine even more to grow into the potential that you really are, rather than just managing what I want from you, right? To really support people into their fullest growth. So that's really what I see. And so when we start talking about conditioning, it's really interesting. When you start having the conversation from a Mindvalley perspective, we talk about this thing called the culturescape. So this culture that we've been discussing of how we view leadership, how we raise our children, this is all part of a culturescape, right? Culture literally is so deep layered onto our systems, onto our biology, that it feels, we navigate it like a landscape. It's legitimately palpable. Like when you look out, you see the mountains, you see the river, you see the trees, you see the landscape. The culturescape is invisible, but you can feel it. The most common place I feel it, this is the example I love to give, is when I'm on public transport and I see like an elderly woman, especially standing, and I see a young guy sitting. And in that moment, like I can feel this churning in my gut, which is like, oi, get up, give her your seat, right? And in those moments, I'm aware that I can, it's a literal visceral response. And I share this with you because I know you can feel it too, right? I can see you both nodding your head, and like everybody can kind of feel this energy, like, oh, this is really but maybe that's just a cultural thing. Maybe that elderly woman is empowered. Maybe she doesn't want to give up her seat. Maybe she doesn't need the seat. Maybe the guy is actually, maybe he's got some sort of disability. Maybe he needs the seat. Who am I to be judging them, right? But at the same time, there's this part of me that goes, that's wrong, right? Now, if it was me in that seat, of course I would give it up, because that's the way I was brought up. But because of the way I was brought up, that's my culture. That's my culturescape, right? So the culturescape is built upon a conversation that I know you love having, Jayanti, which is around rules, right? So these bullshit rules that consistently come up. And that is one of the bullshit rules, perhaps, me judging someone that's sitting down that's younger than someone else that's standing that's older. Maybe one of the rules is, you stop judging, because maybe he actually is disabled and he needs the chair more than she does. And I don't know about this. Maybe he is being arrogant and he's not caring about her, right? Either way, there's something for me to learn and take from that situation. But one of the rules is also that, hey, you've got to be, you're a success if you only really study these 2 or 3 things, right? Redefining success is a massive, massive conversation around conditioning. But yeah, we're conditioned by so many different ways. This is the whole conversation which stems from, which has been not just personal development, but I guess psychology from a long time, which is nature versus nurture, right? This is what we're touching on, which is who are you inherently versus who has the world made you into be. And I truly believe that if we are the universe looking in on ourselves, there is kind of this innate nature that we carry, right? And we are nurtured into a certain way of being. And again, just reflecting back to where my answer started is, our nurture is doing the best it can from a place of love. Yeah, but then it comes to a point where, it's time to come back to your inner nature and realize, okay, nurturing has gotten me this far, but what is it that I really, really want for myself, with all the love and the blessings of all my nurturing that supported me up until this point.
Thank you. That was amazing. You said so many beautiful things, but the one thing that I really liked, which I picked up, which was such a simple line, which was everyone is doing the best they can, and it sounds so simple. But our parents were probably doing the best they can when they told us we should study engineering or be a lawyer or be a doctor or a dentist or whatever it is. And I think that's amazing. Like when we start looking at things from their perspective, I think we can break out of the conditioning eventually.
And also, yeah, that space, like just reminding everybody that you have a choice to choose your beliefs as well, right? Like if you're choosing to believe that your parents are funneling you into something that is not right for you because that's just what they want from you and not because they love you, then the relationship you have with your parents, man, like they gave you life, like this is a really interesting kind of energy that you're bringing into the equation. So if you can choose your mindset, why not choose the empowering one from a basic perspective and then feel into the truth, they do love you. Like even if their love can be misconstrued in some ways, sometimes some parents are harsher, they doing it from a place of wanting the best from you most of the time. So yeah.
Love that. Thank you. Shall we move on to the next question?
I'm all yours.
Yeah. Okay. Over to Kalyani.
Thank you, Amrit. That was a really refreshing perspective because, the way I reflect on how my parents, they were doing the best from what they knew and what they wanted for me, and the way I'm parenting now. So it kind of puts things into perspective already. How do it's this dance between, I like your podcast about the parenting podcast, Shifali Sabari, where she says she has this metaphor about it's like a dance of how much do you let go and how much do you control. I kind of feel like it's a tightrope walk as a parent all the time. So
yeah, she was really intense to have a conversation with. Yeah, I found her really dramatic actually when she was saying, hey, conscious parenting is don't have kids. And I was like, whoa. You want to be conscious and parent, don't have kids. And I was like, I'm conscious and I want to be a parent, so I'm gonna have kids. What then? And she's like, okay, from there then. So it was really interesting. Thank you for listening into the podcast.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I listened to your one from, not the last one, but the one before that with Dr. Gay Hendricks about creating your luck. That was really, really fascinating. So the next question is about, is it really true that when you are truly aligned with your purpose, and so once you break out of these rules, you've discovered what it is that you want to do and how you want to contribute to society, is it true then that things just happen in alignment with that? Is it true that luck is on your side when you're truly aligned with this?
Yeah, so there's a whole conversation between this one and the one we just had, which steps over like how you step into doing what you love to do, which takes a lot of courage. I'm sure we'll probably come to that point sooner rather than later in this conversation today. But there's, if we just take a moment to realize that it's not necessarily easy to break your conditioning, to break your mold, right? But it does take some courage. You hear again and again these conversations that fortune favors the bold. The universe support, like the universe, what does it do? It does something to courage, like in the universe favors courage or supports your courage, right? And this comes through And it, to be honest, touch wood, in my experience, it's been something really, really true for me. So when you've taken courage, which we'll talk about soon, it really changes the way that your life you start to navigate. It takes a lot of inner fortitude. Um, some real digging you've got to do, but also sometimes life puts you in situations where you can't really go any other way. And generally, if we come back to that conversation around we are the universe looking in on ourselves, if I start doing exactly what I'm meant to be doing, so I'll give you a quick example. When you talk about luck, I feel like you feel lucky because you're doing what you were meant to do. You feel like you're in your flow states. If flow states are a conversation to people, if not, I've got a couple of podcasts with Stephen Kotler. He's amazing. He founded Flow Research Collective. We've had some really great conversations in and around flow. And so what starts to happen, and I'm by no means an authority on luck, touch wood, still touching wood. So in this space, what I find is, but this is the conversation that most of the people that we learn from have, is that if you are doing what you were put here to do, for me, it's purely conversation. Like, it's been a massive soul searching journey and a long winded journey to get to here. And now I'm just podcasting, speaking, coaching. As long as I'm in conversation, I'm doing the thing, touch wood, that I was put here to do, right? It took a long time for me to find that. Now that I've found it, touch wood, I feel very blessed, very humbled. Now, consistently, like you'll notice, I didn't necessarily reach out to the Teja crew like, hey, I want to come out and give a talk. You guys reached out to me like, hey, how's it going? We'd love to have you on, right? Now, that's pretty lucky, right? Like, I get to connect with an amazing community of amazing people, right? And like, how blessed and touched with fortune am I? My values, just for those that want to know, are connection, contribution, and celebration, right? And I get to connect and contribute to an amazing tribe, right? So how did I get so lucky, right? And it's, so this conversation around luck is like, when you're doing what you were meant to do, when you are dropping back into your inner nature, you are looking in on the universe as the lens that you are, rather than rushing to be something that you're not. The universe supports that, in my humble perspective, right? It goes, hey, this is who you were meant to be. And now that you're doing this, here, keep going, right? So for me, it started really simple. Like, I would start to go into a podcast and I would be exhausted. And I was like, oh, this one's not going to be good. Or I'd be going into it about to go on stage. And I'm like, oh, I'm pretty tired. Like, I'm not sure if this one's going to be good. And I'd go on and boom, the energy would arrive and we'd have this amazing conversation. And afterwards, I'd leave energized. And I was like, where did this energy come from? Like, what is going on? How come I feel so energized? And it's like, well, no, you're doing what you were meant to do. The universe has your back when you're doing what you're meant to be doing, right? There are some people that can, you see big wave riders, you see people that are meditating in remote places, you see people that are high performance CEOs that have really weird schedules. Like Elon Musk works 7 days of the week, right? But he's doing his thing. That's where he finds his flow. The universe put him here to do what he's doing, right? He's definitely not fulfilling someone else's agenda, right? So when you start fulfilling your own agenda, you're coming back to that inner spirit and what that spirit wants to see itself through in this world, in this lifetime, as you. And then naturally, the way Vishen puts it from Mindvalley, he goes, maybe that higher power that puts you here is clearing all the obstacles in the way because you're doing what you were meant to be doing. So it goes, hey, like that obstacle, let me just clear that out of your way for you because you took some courage to step into what you're really meant to do. Let me facilitate the journey for you. Touch wood. It is more, if you start tuning into the Gay Hendricks conversation, there are 8 pillars that he talked about as being the key for luck, right? And the last one for me was the most important one, where he goes, feel gratitude. And I was like, wait a sec, what? And he goes, feel gratitude. And I was like, wow, that's really, you're onto something there, right? And this conversation happens again and again for me because I started off as a meditation teacher that then evolved into a life coach, still teaching meditation to this day. A quick conversation around meditation is we often look for happiness, right? But we're always looking outside for happiness. It's always like, that will bring me happiness. This will bring me happiness. This will bring me happiness. Where do you feel happiness? Inside, right? And externally trying to find things outside to make you feel happy inside. I'm sorry, it's a broken equation. Yeah. So we're consistently doing that. And with the luck factor, he goes the same thing. He goes, feel gratitude inside. Because when you get something lucky happens to you, it's like, oh, I won that car. Awesome. I feel, oh my God, I feel so lucky. I'm so grateful. Oh my God, thank you. What's the first thing you do is you say thank you. You experience the gratitude, right? So he turns around and goes, experience the gratitude first. If you start feeling grateful, you'll notice luckier and luckier things happen. So from that perspective, if you can touch wood, like I'm so grateful to be able to make a living from conversation, right? Like I am beyond grateful. Like that is just, I still wake up and I pinch myself. I'm like, is this real? Like I can be a life coach and a public speaker and a podcaster doing things like this. And legitimately I get reimbursed for my time. Touch wood. Wow. Right. I feel grateful. Right. So maybe feeling gratitude unlocks the luck. I don't know. Right. But that's a short answer or a long answer to your simple question. Touch wood.
That's a fantastic answer. I mean, everyone kind of knows about gratitude, and you should feel gratitude, and it's to be consistent with that gratitude is something that is work in progress, I think, all the time. But I feel like the more conscious I become, the more I say to myself, did I practice gratitude today? The more I think, yes, at least I'm becoming aware of it. That's the starting point. But it's a great reminder, definitely.
Can I share a couple of things about gratitude then, just quickly?
Oh, yeah.
First, so basically, first thing every morning, I swing my legs out of my bed and I'm just grateful. First thing, like, it's just a prayer of gratitude. Some people don't wake up. It's kind of morbid, but some people don't wake up. I'm grateful for another day. Might be a hard day, might be a great day, might be a good day. Either way, I'm grateful for another day. Right. So it starts with as simple as that. So if you can ritualize some of these things, you don't have to check in with yourself to see if they're still there, right? And the other piece is gratitude really changed my life when I really started coming home to, I realized, so a big part of my journey was about honesty. And then once I installed honesty, I started realizing personal development is a thing. And then I came to this conversation around gratitude. And what really dropped in for me was I ran this exercise, which was, okay, I'm going to gather, I think it was 10 or 15 or 20, I can't remember, pick your number, right? I set the intention to gather 20 or 15 or 10, however many, let's start go with 10 pieces, like 10 thank yous a day. That was my mission, right? So every day I had a checklist in my head. I'm going to gather 10 thank yous. And so, but I did weird things after a while, right? Like, cause you'd interact with someone and they'd be like, you hold the door open. And they'd be like, thank you. And you're like, cool, got one. And then you're walking down the street, someone dropped their rubbish, you pick it up, put it in the bin, and they're like, thank you. No worries, got another one. And kindness was started to emerge, right? But then I started doing some weird things. Like, when you're like, I used to live in a tall apartment building and I'd hold the elevator door open and the guy's just walking in the building and I'm just standing here like 5 minutes, just like waiting for him to walk all the way down the foyer. And he walks in, he's like, you're creepy. Thank you. All right, no worries, got one, And so, yeah, you can, hack your way, gamify it. You can try and make it fun for yourself, like you can find ways to find gratitude. It doesn't have to be something that you have to sit down and write down. That was a fun way, touch wood, that I got to implement it in my life. It was really fun.
I love the gamification aspect. Makes it, sometimes people think of it, oh, is this far too serious or it's far too much? What have I mean, why should I be grateful? What's been so different today? People don't appreciate, like, sometimes just if they got to have a hot cup of tea, for example, that is gratitude. Just being in that moment is gratitude. So love the idea of gamification. Jayanti, do you want to progress to the next question?
Yes. Before that, I just want to say something quickly on the subject of gratitude also, is because I started doing this thing called the 100 Happy Days Challenge, which I had done a few years ago and had quit on day 37 because I forgot. And then
you always start again.
Then I'm back. Start again. And now I feel like there's no one thing that I'm happy for in a day. There's like so many things, and the list goes on. So I feel like when you start finding it, it just keeps coming to you,
Yeah, when I share this from stage, I often encourage, like, I guide people through meditations around this. And the key thing is to see if you can find gratitude in the small things. Like someone handed you a pen when you needed it. Someone held the door open. If you can find it in the small things, you find it in the big things. The neurochemical process that you go through that triggers for the small things, your brain doesn't know the difference, right? And one of the key things about gratitude, it literally rewires your brain. Like we have a bias, right? So generally speaking, every one, like we have for every one positive thought we have 5 negative ones, just as a baseline, right? And that's based on our survival instinct. It's survival. It's making it like, be wary, be controlling. But you can learn to rewrite that with gratitude. So it's a really, really, really powerful tool. I know it sounds really simple when people fluff it off and it's like, gratitude. Okay, again, this thing. But legitimately, like it is a really powerful tool, really simple, but it works. And when you stop to think about just as a basic thing, human beings are wired for connection. We're wired for connection. The one thing that makes us different from every other species is our able to cooperate, right? If you threw 100,000 monkeys in a stadium, you can't fit 100,000 monkeys in a stadium. You can fit 100,000 human beings in a stadium to watch a football match. Our ability to cooperate has set us apart, right? So our ability to connect is what's key there, right? And our ability to connect, if you gave me berries and I'm grateful and I gave you an arrowhead, this gratitude that we feel and we exhibit by exchange is actually what helped us as an evolutionary tool. We're wired to feel good for gratitude. So it's pretty profound. It's pretty profound.
Wonderful. I'll move on to the next question before we start digressing into other things. So the next question is about persistence. So oftentimes on a regular, for a person who's following a regular, traditional, conventional path, they encounter failure and everyone says, oh, well, so what, try again, you can pass the engineering exam next time. But if I fail to be an artist, everyone will probably say, oh, well, I mean, it's hard to be an artist. We told you should be an engineer. So I think it's hard to embrace failure, but I think sometimes it's harder to embrace failure, and we start doubting ourselves, especially when we're not following the norms. So what's your view on how we can embrace this failure?
Yeah, touch wood. So yeah, I think where we initially started, going from the place of breaking through the mold, and then the next piece of the conversation is probably stepping into your courage, and then from there, before we start feeling lucky, is probably this piece where you're talking about is finding persistence and being okay with failure. So the key thing is, for me, right, and I'm conscious as I share this because I just like to remind everybody, if you are the universe looking in on yourself, my truth is going to be different to your truth, right? Because no two people are the same, right? My truth in around the conversation around failure is that failure is great, right? Do I feel that way when I experience it? No, right? But is it great? Yes. So the famous quote in this space is Thomas Edison, right? He created 100 versions of the light bulb, and people said, "Dude, give up. Like, can you seriously give up? Like, you've done this 100 times." And he goes, "Give up now? Give up now?" And most people are like, okay, he's done it 100 times. Okay, I'm done. Like, I can't figure this out. And he said, I've figured out 100 ways that this doesn't work. I'm so much closer, right? And that is key. If you can shift your mindset to seeing it that way. So when I first started podcasting, it was huge. One of the things that my coaches coached me into was this conversation around no doesn't mean no. No just means not right now. Right. So the number of times I tried to reach out to people and say, hey, do you want to come onto my show? I'd love to have a conversation with you. I could learn a lot from you. I could share that with my community. And they're like, no. And I was like, okay, that just means not right now. It means your show is not big enough. It means, people don't know you yet. So there's not enough value for me to show up. So not right now. So they would say no. And all I would hear would be like, not right now. Right. So it's important to identify what your failure really means. It's important to identify what success really means from the outset as well, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole. But the key thing there is you're going to meet failure again and again. And we often have this misconception that, if you are on the path that you're meant to be on, like Muhammad Ali, let's say, like he's a champion, right? Champions don't get hit. They don't fail. And it's like, no, champions get hit, right? They get hit again and again and again and again and again, but it's how they respond to that hit. It's how they respond to come back, right? So there's a couple of perspectives here. The first one for me is the conversation around alignment, right? So sometimes you experience a failure and it's time to do some, and hopefully you've got a meditation practice or a journaling practice or a self-reflection practice where you can stop and go, okay, what did this failure teach me? Is it teaching me that what I'm up to is not for me? right? Is it teaching me that, okay, maybe like, this, I went out on site today and I made a very poor judgment call as a structural engineer. And, why is this happening? And it's like, well, maybe it's teaching you that you're not passionate about this. So maybe you're failing because you're out of alignment, and it's going to get worse and worse until you sort of pull your socks up and go, what is it that I'm really meant to be doing? Right. Then the other place is, okay, maybe it's not a question of alignment. Maybe you're podcasting people and it's going well, and I'm interviewing people. I'm sorry, I'm giving my own examples, if that's okay. And I'm interviewing people, and it's like, oh wow, like that one potentially didn't go so well, right? That was meant to be the best podcast ever, and it didn't go so well. What's going on there? And I was like, what, I'm failing now. What's the perspective? And it's like, maybe this is a test. How badly do I really want this? Yeah. So sometimes I feel like the universe tests us, which is how badly do you really, really want this? Right now, those are two very opposite dialogues, which could be triggered by a very similar response, right? Like messing up and making the wrong judgment call. It's up to you to choose. Okay, am I out of alignment? Or is the universe testing me to go like, am I being tested by the universe? Is this really what I want? And then, yes, universe, this is really what I want. So I'm going to go around for the second, so Muhammad Ali, does he really want to win? So yes, bang, I got hit, but I'm going to go in for the next one and hopefully be able to land the next punch, right? So how do you know at that point, which one is it the right one? Is it the alignment piece? Or is it the I go deeper piece? So is at that point? Great question, to be honest. And your head is really going to struggle with it. Your rationale is really, oh man, your head really struggles in this space. Yeah. But your spirit, I don't believe it does. Right? Inside, inside you really, 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 you've always known, touch wood. And I remember I preface this answer with, we kind of all have our own truth, but deep down inside, there's always been that thing that you said as a kid you really wanted to do. Right? Like there was always that thing. And there's something based in and around in conjunction to that really mattered to you, right? So tuning in. And from there, when I hear failure, like a thing that I think it's interesting that you've got persistence as the word on the slide. Consistency is a huge thing. It's massive. Because generally what happens is we hit a roadblock and we feel like, oh, this must mean that I'm out of alignment and this is not for me, right? To be honest, truth be told, touch wood, I see this a lot more often than I wish I did. And I feel like potentially maybe we're getting softer. I don't know, right? But I see this a lot. It's like, oh, I tried, I made 5 social media posts and I was going to be a life coach and no one responded to my posts. No one really has to hear what I have to say, so I'm not meant to be a life coach. And it's like, did you do any life coaching sessions? Like, did you speak to anyone? Did you support them on their journey? No, I made all these posts and no one responded to me, so I'm not meant to be doing it. It's like, you threw the baby out with the bathwater just because you don't have social media engagement. That is just like surface level shit. Like, what about you doing the thing that you're meant to be doing? Right? So there's this real idea of like, hey, what is it that you really want to do? And finding some sort of consistency with it. So touch wood, outside of my relationships with my parents, my partner, the podcast has been one of the most profound relationships in my life. Every week I've produced a podcast and now it's been 3 years and 2 weeks, right? Every Monday a podcast has gone live. Every Monday. Now, some weeks it's been like, oh my God, I've got no one to interview. Do I interview myself? I don't know. But that has called me out, right? Like there's been moments of like, okay, even if last week's podcast didn't go so well, right? It's like, you still got to do next week's podcast because you set the expectation, right? So what you expect of yourself, I make it an obligation for myself to show up again and again. So even if I fail, I'm going to keep pushing through, right? So consistency is really powerful. The momentum that you build is completely underrated. This is a conversation that I don't feel like people have enough. Is just what momentum can achieve. And you've just got to show up. Legitimately showing up is half the battle. Yeah. If you can show up, we all know this, like getting to the gym is the whole piece. Once you're in the gym, you're like, I'm here now, let's go, But it's like when getting there is like, oh, to leave this couch and leave this house and to get to the gym, right? So that piece is really what like the real challenge is, to motivate yourself. And this is where life coaching helps a lot, because instead of having to rely on your willpower to do things, you can build habits, right? You can hack yourself to just build a habit to do things, just build a habit to do things. You know, like we talked about gratitude before. Touch wood, I don't think about it. I wake up, boom, I'm in gratitude. I walk out onto my day starting with gratitude, right? It's like a habit now, right? So you can install all these habits for yourself. So yeah, I think failure is a great topic, to just have a look at yourself and how you respond to it. And it's teaching you something, right? And maybe that's just my programming as a Sikh. Like I look at life as a lesson. So life is consistently teaching me, teaching me, teaching me, right? So what is my failure teaching me? Is it calling me into another sort of alignment? Is it course correcting me? Or is it asking me to, do you really want this? Like, are you showing up with maximum courage? And do you really want this? Go for it again. Come on, demonstrate to me that you are really wanting and deserving of this opportunity that you're behind. And only you, like your internal voice, can tell you that.
Love it.
That is so profound, and I think consistency is underrated, to be honest, and it's seen as boring, and people don't want to glorify it as much as it deserves to be glorified. Honestly, showing up is more than half the thing for me, I think. I really love the example you gave about, even if you felt like you didn't do a great podcast, you still have to do the next week. So you've got to do it. You've got to do it. And the moment you set that expectation of yourself, I'm pretty sure when you thought that you didn't have speakers, things just manifested, probably just because you have that attitude of, yes, I have to show up.
Absolutely. And it's I'm sure it's much the same for you. Like when we look at what you're creating with Teja, like you've set a cadence, you've set a frequency, like we're going to do this. And you start noticing who you become. Like the first one was like novel, when it's like, oh, this is exciting. Is it going to work? Is it going to happen? And then you start setting the cadence. And some talks are greater than others. Some talks have more of an audience. Some talks have a better speaker. But you're consistently showing up and you learn to dial it in. And the thing is, man, like the person you learn to become in the art of doing, you know, we can talk about things and we can discuss theories and ideas, right? Like I thought I wanted to be an international speaker until I started becoming an international speaker, and I was like, oh yeah, this is really what I wanted. You know, like it was everything for me, touch wood, right? But there are often things we talk about things and it's like, this would be really good. It'd be really great to create a webinar series. I'm sure people tuning in have thought about this several times. It'd be great to create a webinar series, host people that we enjoy listening to, the commitment, the person you become through that, like just from the outset, just a simple thing like your network, girls. Like I'm sure it's evolving right now as we speak, right? Like you're the average of the 5 people you spend your time with. If I'm the 10th person here, like I'm sure he's just like, you know, the people you guys are interacting with is probably blowing your socks off as well, right? Like you're just growing and growing and growing.
Absolutely. You've made us value consistency more, and you've made us think, yes, got to keep this going. Thanks, Amrit.
Shall I move to the next question?
Yeah, sure. So defining success. So when you're on this journey and now you're thinking, like you said before, you know, it's about the rules and then getting out of the mold and then having the consistency to show up and then encountering luck, which is great. And then I see this as the fourth piece, as success. So how do you know you've made it? I mean, you still keep showing up, but how do you define the success? Because in terms of society, the success is pretty much predefined about if you've had this career and if you've had this career trajectory or you've got this house or this car or whatever. When you're on your purpose journey, how do you know you've made it?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. I think this is, if I'm honest with you, I think one of the dialogue pieces in there is really, really important to touch on, which is how do you know if you have made it? And sometimes I hate being this guy, but I've got to go there with you. What happens if I just challenge you and say you're never going to make it? You know, life is a journey. It's dynamic, it's fluid, it keeps evolving. At some point, you know, you wanted to be a mother. So how do you define success? Once you became a mother, your whole definition of success changed. I'm sure of it. Right? It's like, I just want to be a mother. And it's like, oh my God, now I'm responsible for this thing. You know, it's like, don't kill this thing. Like, keep this thing alive. You know, like your whole definition of success changes immediately. And it's so fluid. So how could, you know, how do you define when you've made it? And I think that's potentially where we start running into some problems, is because we kind of set targeted fixed goals. Yeah. And it's great because future planning is something that human beings are amazing at, right? We can forecast into the future and see where we're going to go and map that journey out. That's really powerful. It's really powerful to be able to do that. It's one of the amazing gifts of our species. But the reality is, if we consistently stay locked on things, there are so many other opportunities around those things. Like, for example, I stayed locked on becoming a structural engineer. Yeah. So I spent a long time becoming a structural engineer. Had I not been so fixed on that and gotten in touch with some basic things at a fundamental level, which is like, hey, what are my values? What do I really value in life? You know, and it's like, yeah, I value stuff, I value building homes and spaces for people. And the idea was actually, no, I value building positive mindsets. Right. So in some way, I was doing what I was meant to be doing. It was like building something, right? But it wasn't connected exactly to what I was. So my story was like, hey, I was this meditator that was a structural engineer. And I was like, how does a meditator and a structural engineer go hand in hand? You know, it's like this really weird thing. But inside, I knew that for me, I was always marveling at architecture, like how our relationship with space is really interesting. And I loved exploring inner space through meditation, right? But I was consistently meditating and being the engineer, right? So there was this real interesting kind of dance there until one point I just gave up. I said, you know what? For me, I'm most fascinated by how our inner space and outer space meet. That's my curiosity. That's fundamentally where I'm most like when I open up YouTube, that's all the videos I'm watching. When I look at all the books I've got, that's what all the books are about. You know, your inner space and how to navigate the world, human behavioral psychology is everything. And so from there, it was like, wow, this is when I let go. This is who really emerges. So from there, it was like, okay, that potentially becomes my conversation for me. And that from there, it's like, okay, who is this person? What are the values of this person? I always come back to values in a really big way. So I mentioned this before. My values are connection, contribution, celebration. So for me, success in today's world looks like, am I connecting? Yeah, so right now, when you guys are like, hey, do you want to come give a talk? And it's like, contribution, do I get to contribute to people? Absolutely. As long as I'm, maybe it's I get to be of service, amazing, right? So I'll get the opportunity to share with you guys. And then celebration, if I can share something that helps someone live life a little bit more radiantly, a little bit more celebrate, like they can celebrate life a little bit more in the day to day, then my work here is done, right? So connecting to really what's in there for me is really important. The conversation around purpose is a big one, right? And I'm conscious of the time we've got. But I think the conversation around purpose is a massive one. Just to put it succinctly, we all, I fundamentally believe, we're not here by accident. And I know some people will be like, life has no meaning. So what you're saying is not true, which, okay, you're entitled to believe that. My truth is that, you know, I believe we're all here for a reason. And so I feel like we all have a purpose, right? And on that journey, if we are swimming outside of our lanes, if we're swimming in someone else's mold, if we're trying to be someone that we're not, you're not going to be successful, right? Because that time has dissolved, right? Like your head is only going to get you so far. Success for me is alignment of, you know, this conversation around spiritual entrepreneurship, right? It's like this conversation around my head, my heart, my body, my thoughts, my spirit, they're all in alignment for what I'm doing. Right? This is what I really enjoy doing, and this is what I'm going to do. So that when that conversation opens up, you're in alignment, right? Because you're not only facilitating your inner purpose of who you want to be, but also what the universe puts you here for, right? Deep concept, but legitimately. And that's where you feel energized. That's where you feel flow. That's where the luck starts to open up. Why? Because you needed some courage to step into it. But when you step into it, you start experiencing things, and then they start affirming you, and you start walking into this path of success. The key place to begin, if you're not going to set smart goals, which everybody knows for defining success, is to ask yourself some questions like, what do I want to experience? What are the experiences you want to have in life? And don't be like, oh yeah, I want to climb Mount Everest because everybody said that'll make me a hero. No, right? Give yourself 2 minutes, set the timer, get a pen and paper, and just jolt. Just don't even think about it. Just start writing. And you'll be surprised when you stop and you look and you go, oh, I always wanted to go to Brazil. I don't know why. And you look at it and it's like, oh, okay. There are these experiences that are waiting inside you that are just uniquely yours that you want to have, right? What do you want to experience? How do you want to grow? This is the next question. And if you're not sure how you want to grow, have a look at the experiences and allow them to inform your growth, right? If you want to go to Brazil, you need to be able to speak Portuguese. Go on, grow, learn some Portuguese, right? And the last piece is, how do you want to contribute? What is your going to contribution to be? And oftentimes in this space, people feel like contributing to the planet is way better than contributing to myself. It's not true. Fill up your own cup first, and where your cup overfloweth, share from there, right? So contribution can be as simple as contributing to yourself, can be big and contributing to others, your family, everyone. Yeah. So that's kind of the piece around defining your own success. Allow it to be not measured by what other people have dictated and predicated for you. Right? I think bringing it back to the conversation around breaking the mold, what are the experiences that are uniquely you, right? This is kind of like, what is it that you really wanted to do in this lifetime, right? Because for some people, we're all like, let's be clear, right? Like everybody here tuning in, often the conversation is, yep, get a good job, get a good salary, government job, white picket fence, have kids, and, retire and then live my life after 60, 65 once I've retired. How much health do you have left after 65? 200 years ago, or maybe 500 years ago, people were only living to like 50. And now you're meant to live after 50. Your biology is not even available to you after 60. You know what I mean? Like, what? So redefining that conversation around, okay, life is right now. Life is here and now. And maybe that's just the meditator in me speaking, but if life is here and now, what can you do to facilitate it in the here and the now, right? So do you redefining your success, living in alignment to your values, and maybe you don't make the jump straight away to living completely in alignment with what's coming through, but you start bit by bit by allowing these experiences in.
We've got a question, if you're happy to answer it.
Sure.
From Naina, our mother. And she's asking, if we are feeling happy doing whatever we are doing, does it mean that we have found the purpose of our life?
Great question. Thank you so much. Wonderful to hear from you. Great to connect. I bet you're super proud of these two. So tuning in, happiness, if I'm honest with you, there's a difference between happiness and joy. Yeah, is my truth, touch wood. So yeah, if you're feeling happy, like I'll just be frank, like you can get happiness, you can smoke a joint and you can be happy, right? But if you smoke 10 joints, are you getting anywhere? Like probably not, right? So there's one of my favorite teachers is Ido Portal, and he talks about happiness as a pretty weak orientation. It's a good orientation, don't get me wrong. It's better than sadness. But fulfillment is a much more powerful orientation, right? And the journey of fulfillment, like setting up podcasts, giving these talks, life coaching people through their stuff, it doesn't make me happy all the time. No, it doesn't always make me happy. This is an exception. Like, I'm connecting with beautiful people and this makes me happy for sure. But it's deeper than that. There's a joy that's present for me, right? And the reason the joy is there, because not only am I happy here now, but this is also unlocking a future for me where I become more of a public speaker, become more of a life coach, right? Become more of a podcaster. I learn to articulate my ideas better and better every time I share them, right? Touch wood. So from on that journey, there's a joy towards my fulfillment, which is a much deeper set emotion than happiness, if that makes sense. So happiness can be really good as a diagnostic tool, but also just being mindful, like, pizza makes you happy, but if you have 10 pizzas, you can't sustain it, right? But conversation for me makes me happy. But if I have like thousands and thousands of conversation, somehow that is sustainable for me, touch wood. So what's going on there, for me, that was joy. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks a lot. That was great. So I think we can move to the meditation now.
Yep. And then
Cool.
post the meditation, we can allow some more questions if people have any. Let's dive into the meditation by Amrit.
Sure, guys. So, just on my journey, one of my biggest challenges was I struggled with depression for about 6 years. And when I went to the psychologist, in her infinite wisdom, she handed me prescription pills. And I took the pills, and I remembered that, yeah, I was really high and it was a really amazing feeling, but I realized I couldn't live life on a roller coaster of highs and lows and highs and lows. And the doctor that prescribed me to the psychologist, she gave me this incredible mindfulness technique. And at the time when she shared it with me, I looked at her and I laughed. Yeah, I was just like breathing, really, okay. I've been doing this for how many years now? Like I'm alive, I'm sitting right in front of you, we're discussing breathing. And she's like, just learn to count your breath. And I didn't know back then, but this was mindfulness 101. So I invite you to just take a moment and come with me on this journey. Very simple, very, very simple, and very accessible day to day, time and time again. And you can use it whenever you need. So if you just close down your eyes, breathing in to the count of 1, and breathing out to the count of 2. Breathe in, 3, breathe out, 4. Breathe in, 5, breathe out, 4. Breathe in, 3, breathe out, 2. Breathe in, 1, breathe out, 2. Breathe in, 3, breathe out, 4. Breathe in, 5, breathe out, 4. Breathe in, 3, breathe out, 2. Breathe in, 1. Just allowing your breath to come back into its normal cadence. And then when you're ready, gently opening your eyes, coming back.
Very simple. Far too simple, but very effective. And I think most of us underestimate how effective it is.
Yeah, so I just usually tune in with you to check into your state and just see how you feel on the other side. And you'll sort of find yourself a little bit more calm, a little bit more centered. And that's like us just going through it for 2 rounds. Yeah, if you are going through something and you need a moment to drop in, go through 10 rounds of just counting your breath up to 5 and back. I was told to count up to 10 and back. For me, 5 worked better. I never really made it to 10. I always get lost at 7 or 8. So I was like, make it simple, go to 5. And I remember when they handed this to me, I was like, this is not going to work. And I remember being in an anxiety filled environment. And by some grace of God, I'd written the exercise on a piece of paper, or she had written it actually, and I'd slipped it into the back cover of my phone, and I had a clear cover on my phone at the time. And I picked up my phone, and I saw the exercise, and I just started breathing. I remember being at university, and the walls were closing in. Like my anxiety was just so real. Like I was losing my breath. And I was like, you know what? I've got nothing to lose. I'm just going to try this breathing. And as I started coming back into my breath, literally the spaciousness that started to open up completely changed the game for me. From there, I started researching mindfulness. I became a meditation. Meditation gave me so much. It healed my depression. I became a meditation teacher, started questioning my purpose. From there, became a purpose and a life coach. now speaker, podcaster, everything you see. So touch wood is a simple exercise, linchpin to everything.
Awesome. I think you have the best voice for being a meditation instructor, to be honest.
Touch wood.
I was like, I just felt so peaceful just listening to your voice. And I think it just magically put me into that state. So I think you're truly in alignment with your purpose.
Touch wood. Thank you. Yeah, there's heaps of meditations on YouTube there as well if you want to tune in. We love creating them. I love creating them. And the team loves editing them. So yeah, happy to, if you want to check some more of them out, they're there.
Awesome.
At this point, I think I'm going to invite the audiences, if they have any questions, to type them into the chat window. And while people gather their thoughts and type something, Jayanti, do you have any questions you want to get started by asking Amrit?
I think I can just start to summarize what I learned from this session for all of us. That would be really nice. So you said some really beautiful things that I'm definitely going to take away. But I love the concept about happiness versus fulfillment. I thought that was brilliant. And happiness can be so simple, right? Like drinking a glass of wine can be happiness for some people. But is that fulfillment? Not really. And so I think there's lots of good takeaways. But to summarize some of the things that we spoke about the rules, my favorite concept is to challenge the norms, really think out of the box, and I think that is what will allow us to be more of ourselves. And then we spoke about luck, and that was really nice, especially your podcast with Gay Hendricks. That was like an amazing thing to hear also. And I think I definitely agree that we get these little signs from the universe that tell us that we're on the right path. You know? And then we spoke about choosing success, because we often get into this trap of have I made it? Have I made it? Have I made it? And then you're like a child sitting at the back of the car, waiting to reach the destination, but you can't look out of the window and enjoy the scene. So I think success is not just about it's not just about getting somewhere. It's about a choice. It's about a perspective, and it's the same thing with failure. So how we see failure is really important. So I loved what you said about that. I think that kind of summarizes it. There's a question, which is, when we're facing a failure or a challenge, how can we know if it is because it's not meant for us or it's just the universe testing us?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah. And for me, generally, it comes back to this work of what are my values, right? So if I'm living in alignment with my values, then generally I plow ahead, right? So if I experience a challenge when it comes to the life coaching, the podcasting, or the speaking, I know I'm connecting, I know I'm contributing, I know I'm helping people celebrate their lives, I know I'm celebrating my life when I'm doing that. For me, it's, absolutely like, yep, keep going, keep pushing ahead. But if I'm consistent just in a space and it doesn't give me the opportunity to connect, maybe the challenge is that, like just to give you an idea, when I was in construction, one of the challenges I had was people didn't necessarily trust and respect each other and like in the work that they were doing. Right. And that was really hard for me because I was building a lot of trust and I was like, I'm a friendly kind of person. And people were generally, I guess, how do we call it? More business minded. Let's just call it that, right? And so if they're that perspective and they're just trying to grab things out of people, they're connecting in the moment to get the task that they need done, but long term, they're jeopardizing their connection. So in that, you can start feeling called into some sort of deeper levels of alignment because like this isn't aligning with me, right? So that's calling you back into your values of connection because it's like that's not fitting, right? Or contribution, right? Like civil engineering was great for me. Just to be honest with you, I was building homes for people and I felt really good about that because I have this value of contribution, right? Until I started working on, you consistently get promoted, and then you get to a place where I was working on 3 separate high-rise towers. And when I was working on these 3 separate high-rise towers, making sure that, everything was being built correctly. Once everything was built, I was working with the client, and 95% of the apartments all sold. Right? We're talking 40-story towers, 95% of the apartments sold, plenty of revenue for the company. But when we started looking at the water usage rates of these towers, only 60% of the power, like one tower was 60% occupied, 50% occupied, 50% occupied. And I was like, why is only 60% of the apartments using water? And they said, oh, the others are just investments. And I'm like, what do you mean investments? Like, people don't even rent it out to people? And it's like, no, these are people just investing in the property market, just buying a property as a product, like you and I buy a phone, and they're just holding onto property because it'll appreciate. And at that moment, like the little contribution that I felt like I was having, the carpet came out from underneath me. And that was, in an instant, it was like, so what is this teaching me? Right? Like I started feeling like this real failure. And in that moment, it was like, what am I failing like? And it's like, your values. Right? My contribution is not actually the way that I thought it was. I'm not building homes for people. I'm just building products that people can build investments in. It's much more lalech oriented, and it really didn't resonate to me. Right? So then I was just like, oh shit. And I had this existential crisis. Now that existential crisis was like, okay, I've got to leave my career, this career that I built, into becoming a podcaster. Right? So that failure again brought me away from, like, because I was living out of contribution. Initially I thought I was doing okay. And then boom, once I realized I wasn't, then it was like, okay, you need to course correct into alignment with contribution. Right? So now there's some challenges. For example, let's say if I'm trying to, I can't even imagine a challenge these days, touch wood, with contribution. I'm just like I'm just after it all the time, touch wood. But there's people that I'm trying to get on the podcast, right? And if I can't connect with them, right, to have the contribution that I want to have, there's an opportunity for me to see that as a failure. It's like, oh, my podcast isn't prominent enough for them, or they'll be too busy, like they don't value my time. Is that a failure? When I check in and it's like, no, I'm connecting, I'm contributing, and I'm celebrating. It's just a matter of not right now. I just need to double down on my connection and my contribution. And then eventually this person will find it valuable for their time to appear on my show, to appear on, like, have the conversation that I want to have with them, right? So then it's like, just double down and keep going. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And she's saying that her question was in context with struggling in a PhD. Very classic, I think.
Yeah. And the PhD is an interesting one, yeah, because I've been there too, right? So when you're doing a PhD, one of the things that you start to realize is you are both your own teacher, and like you're the one asking the question that you have to answer. It's a really interesting space, yeah. Like you might answer the question really well, but you asked a really shit question. It's like, what? And that is like how I failed. Oh my God. So you got to be able to ask a really good question and then provide a really good answer. And in that space, you start questioning many things. I'm not surprised you're having this questioning of yourself and whether this is really right for you as well. Right. So it brings you into the space of independent learning in a really big way. But because it brings you into independent learning, it's a really amazing tool for your life analysis, because you're independently learning about yourself as well. Like, is this really what I want to do? So many people that I've spoken to, Jayanthi included, right? Like that was one of the key places we connected, was her PhD and my PhD, right? So it's common that at this juncture, like you're studying so much, learning so much, that you start asking questions about life as well, because it's all part of it. And so in that space, the question comes up is like, what are my values? Right? Like, what is it that you really value? And sometimes it may be that your PhD is out of your, like, not aligned with your values. Cool. If you're a year out, I would say slog it through, right? If you're 2 years out, I would say, hey, make a statement to yourself and jump ship and follow your values. Don't hold me accountable to the results. So definitely an asterisk, definitely an asterisk. Like, I'm not prescribing something that, then has serious consequences on your life. But the reality is, at least ask the question, what happens if I step into more of my values, is probably what I should say. Ask that question of yourself and see where it takes you.
Love that. I think it's a really good point, something to think about for sure, amongst all the things that we're thinking about while doing a PhD. But,
Well, yeah, like, and you think about what you always wanted to do, right? So for me, some part of me always wanted to actually when I tuned into it, some part of me really wanted to be a doctor. Some part of me actually really wanted to do that. But I was always good with numbers, and people were like, you're really good with numbers, be an engineer. So I was like, okay, I'll be an engineer, right? But the reality is, it all kind of served my journey, because now I kind of feel myself working with people's mindsets. So I'm still working with people, right? But I'm working on people's mindsets. I really enjoy that, touch wood. And it was always meant to land this way. So that's one of the other things, don't stress too much. Yeah. Even the things that are where you feel yourself perceiving to fail, they're calling you into alignment as well. So even right now, like we said, am I in alignment, or am I on alignment and struggling, or am I being course corrected into alignment? Both ways, you're moving forward. Yeah.
Love that.
Both
I
ways you're
love
moving
that.
forward.
Yeah,
So keep going. You're doing great.
I love that.
Thank you so much, Amrit. So I've got the media links here to share. So
Kalyani, do you
yeah,
want to take over?
yeah. Can you hear me? Okay, everyone.
Yep.
Okay, great. Inspired Evolution, Amrit's YouTube channel, I would highly recommend that you subscribe and listen to those fresh podcasts coming out every Monday. I've personally, honestly, been inspired by so many. And sometimes it's really interesting because I'm having some thoughts, or, like you say, course correction, am I in alignment with my values? And then something comes out, and the answer is in the conversation you're having with some speaker who is so inspiring.
Touch wood.
A couple of them have really even helped me take a step back and think, okay, hang on, I think I'm, the personal development key, but am I being too harsh on people? Am I judging people? So it's when the time is right, the message just comes to you, and your podcast has been definitely inspiring me. So I would say also reach out to Amrit on his website, inspiredevolution.com, and also when Amrit is allowed to do face-to-face Mindvalley Australia sessions, I would highly recommend that you go to them. That's where I first met Amrit in 2018. And I still have that piece of paper where I did the exercise about growth, contribution, and experience with you, Amrit. You exposed me to that concept very first I've heard of that. I still have that paper. And I look back and I think this is where it all began. Such a great insight to have. So thank you
Isn't
so
it
much.
amazing seeing how many things have happened as well? I'm sure you look at it and you go, wow, I'm actually doing these things. It's amazing. But yeah, please. Yeah. Thank you so much for reflecting that back to me.
Totally great. So that's the media links. And then Jayanti is going to tell us a little bit about Amrit's life coaching.
I think I'll let Amrit talk about it better because he's done the life coaching. So do you want to tell us about your life coaching?
Yeah, sure. So life coaching is a pretty broad topic, I guess. Yeah, for me, fundamentally, I actually see myself as a health coach. Most people see me as a life coach and a purpose coach, but I see myself as a health coach. In a nutshell, I have found through my life's journey, right, that you can't really do a whole bunch of yoga, go to the gym, go for long walks, drink your green smoothie, and do all these amazing things for your health, but spend 8 to 10 hours doing something that you absolutely hate as part of your function of your job, right? So the biggest part of your health is living in alignment to this conversation around your fulfillment, right? Some of these people like Warren Buffett, yeah, his diet consists of sodas and cheeseburgers and, but he's definitely meant to be an accumulator, definitely meant to be an investor, helping other people with their businesses. And he's healthy at that ripe old age and he's thriving, right? So when you're in alignment to your purpose, I feel like the highest level of health is activated. For a long time, I thought I was a crazy person, just, health and purpose are the same thing. But when we dive deeper into some of our roots, the whole science of Ayurveda is sitting there facilitating at its core your dharma, right? So your dharma is your purpose, right? What were you here to do? Can you facilitate that? So health is here to facilitate your purpose. And on that note, if you're out in your health, if you're not feeling great, it's probably because your alignment to your purpose is out. And if you're feeling like your purpose is out, you can bet your bottom dollar you're stressed out and anxious. Stress is not to be demonized. It's a blessing in your life, right? It's teaching you that, hey, you're out of alignment. It's your body, it's your system screaming at you, saying, hey, please come back into alignment. So if you want to get deeper into alignment to figure out where that goes, I think you've got a testimonial here. Yeah, I think this was all my coaching clients end up becoming friends of mine, but she's a friend of mine now. And yeah, she was working a corporate 9 to 5 on commissions, and now she's a CEO and a director of her own company. She runs events all around Australia now. Yeah, she's definitely living life on her own terms, and her whole thing is connecting people through events. And we found out what her values were, how she can actually capacitate that, and just to sort of open Pandora's box or maybe give away some of the secret sauce. Yeah, once you start diving into life coaching, facilitating your purpose, there often ends to be like some sort of business coaching that comes into the back end of it that I support you with as well, just to help you set up the systems that support you actually integrating that. So it's not just about the alignment. Once we've got it, we go super deep into actually how do we manifest that and make that a real thing for you. So that's a little bit about it. Yeah, feel free to jump into I think www.calendly.com/inspired evolution/discovery gets you into a discovery call, and we can sit down, spend 20 minutes together to see if this is something that really supports you. And if it's not, then we can always direct you to the right kind of coach that you need as well.
Thank you so much, Amrit. Thank you for that. Jayanti, can we move to the next slide?
I'm on it. I think I am.
Perfect. So this is our gratitude slide for Amrit. Thank you so much for your valuable time today. I'm sure people found it very, very insightful. I've got some messages about how thorough you are, and they really loved what you've said. I think people are finding it really, really inspiring, and I'm sure they will love to follow your journey as a podcaster. And thank you also specifically for being so candid and so transparent about your own journey and how you dealt with depression, anxiety. I think it makes it so real for people to see that, coming from a challenge yourself and then helping others and being such an amazing inspiration to others' lives, that is totally the most optimistic thing I can take away.
Wow, touch wood. Thank you so much. Yeah, it means a lot to me to hear you share that and to receive that from you. The Inspired Evolution, the YouTube channel, the podcast is basically operating on 2 levels. There's me inspired to evolve every day in every way, touch wood, on this journey of growth. And as you follow along, you get to this whole candid, open, transparent that you see is kind of what you get, So that's just me on my journey. And the other operation is Inspired Evolution is interviewing these people that are extremely inspiring, that inspire all of our evolutions together. So yeah, it works on those 2 levels, kind of bringing in everybody to kind of inspire the journey. And then, you obviously get to see some of my journey as I'm evolving as well. So yeah, just keeping it humble is the only real way to be, just open, transparent, vulnerable. Thank you so much for, just being on the journey with me. It means a lot to me. It's, as you know, connection, right? It's everything. So
Thank you, Amrit. It was so great, and I hope that the borders open sometime soon and we can see each other at another Mindvalley Australia event. I think I'm so excited because we met like last year and we were supposed to do something together, and now we're actually doing something together. So I'm really happy about it. And yeah, so I'm really hoping that we can see each other soon. And thank you so much. It means a lot to have you. We are super, super, super grateful. So thank you.
thank you so much. It's it's really beautiful to see just how, connections kind of evolve over time and just what emerges from them, and I think, there's always this conversation about, I don't know, just keep showing up and doing the things that you love doing. You don't know where things land. So it's really beautiful to be here with you and just to witness what you two are up to and just to be a part of it, to offer and share is an absolute blessing. So thank you so much for having me on today, an opportunity to connect with the tribe here. Anybody that wants to drop in, like you've been sharing the YouTube channel, the comments there, I personally write back to them. I engage with everybody there, and it's always really fun to sort of see how we're growing and evolving. But yeah, feel free to reach out and connect. I love to connect. Really, thank you girls so much for having me here.
Thank you everyone for joining, and I'm sure you got great value out of Amrit's insights and his amazing story. And connect with us at Teja Discover Radiant. This session is going to be recorded and uploaded onto our channel. And if you want to write to us, you can also email us. There's the email address at the bottom, and keep following us on Instagram as well. Thank you once again, Amrit. Thank you, everyone.